It is the Morning Waffle live with a studio audience this morning. We've got all the skinny from Jefferson City with Darin, your Missouri State Representative from the 137th.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And we'll talk to him right after this.
Good morning.
We are back.
Good morning, Beth. It's good to see you back. She did she missed the Tuesday waffle because she was poll worker.
Yes, thank you, Beth.
Thank you for
poll worker.
being a poll worker, worker of the polls. Something happened last Tuesday.
Yeah.
There was a thing.
There was a thing. It happened. Was
Darin
that?
Chappelle, Missouri State Representative, 137. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
He does a lot of bigger stuff. He does on the KSGF.
Is there anything bigger than the waffle?
I haven't found it yet.
I
have
don't
no
know. I
reason
haven't
to
either.
believe that Donald Trump and Elon Musk aren't watching right now.
It's very possible.
We have no evidence to the contrary.
Yeah,
And
very
that's
possible.
really all that matters.
That's really
Yes.
all that matters. I could be a politician. See?
Oh, 100%. Yes, absolutely you could.
It's all in how you say it. Oh my. Yeah, there was a thing.
There was a thing last Tuesday. What's your synopsis of the thing last Tuesday?
It was crazy Tuesday, not because of who won, but how low the turnout was.
Which was interesting.
Really? I hadn't really
Yeah,
heard that fact.
across the state. Now in my district here in Greene County, the Greene County side of Rogersville included, it wasn't a low turnout. In fact, there were more votes cast in the primary this year than there were 2 years ago.
Okay, that makes more sense because I saw the numbers. I'm like, it didn't seem low to me, but locally it wasn't low.
Locally, it was not too terribly. It's still too low.
Yeah, it's
You
always
know,
too low, right?
I mean, roughly one half of everybody who could vote is registered.
Yeah.
And of them, one half typically show up to vote.
And it's the wrong half.
Yeah, well, just trying to get me beat, aren't you? So you have half of a half. It's 25% of the voters are actually making a determination of people
Which
who
is
are
pretty
eligible.
wild.
Yeah, and then people complain, and it's hard to take complaints real seriously if they don't show up and have their voices.
Yeah, absolutely.
But across the state, it was even worse.
Really? That's
Yeah.
interesting.
And so we had a real low voter turnout, and some things went down in the primaries on the Republican side that were really unexpected, and on the Democrat side as well.
Really?
Yeah. Crystal Quaid pretty handily beat her primary opponent, and he had all the money.
I wondered about that race because Crystal's local. She graduated from Rogersville,
Rogersville gal.
and
That'll explain that.
she's made there you go. She's made waves, with what she's done. And I kind of watched that race because I was curious. And so was he the expected winner on that?
I don't know that there was an expected winner. Part of the problem is that for the Democrats, it's not a problem for me at all. But part of the problem for the Democrats is that they just have a very small contingent of voters that support them on a statewide level basis.
Yeah.
And so winning the Democrat nomination for a statewide office is in no way a guarantee that you're eventually going to hold that office.
That's an interesting point. Yeah.
Since she wasn't the pick of the Democrat Party elites, is she in any danger?
Well,
Oh, jeez.
I'm not sure she wasn't the pick of the elites. Listen,
I gotta chuck those out there.
Yeah, that was a burn. Ignore it. Just put a wall up real quick, Darin. We're gonna make a waffle burn, and then we'll move on.
it's okay.
Yeah.
There you go,
It's
Beth.
the waffle of silence.
Yeah.
So, I've worked with Crystal now for 2 years, and very polite, very cordial in the elevator. She was very kind when she had an open house in her office and invited everybody to come by and say hello, and she was very kind. I don't agree with her on almost any policy.
Sure.
measure,
Yeah.
but I try to get along with everybody, and she still is until January, the minority floor leader.
Yep.
And has been almost her entire legislative career, which is impressive.
Yeah. It's impressive. Yeah.
And she's definitely very, very smart and well-spoken, and she's been kind to me when she didn't have to be.
That's good. Well, that's how it's supposed to work, right?
it is,
even
exactly.
if your opinions are vastly different on policy, you should be able to get along and talk. That's how I kind of feel like things used to find more common ground.
Yeah, it's almost like being an adult.
Oh, weird.
Yeah.
Weird.
Being able to disagree without being disagreeable
Yeah.
is one of my traits that I really strive to exhibit, especially in the house.
Yeah.
And it's tough because
Oh, yeah.
well, I grew up in a big family. Being disagreeable is kind of the thing.
Yes,
So,
yeah.
But
You're a hillbilly too.
yeah, and multi-generational hillbilly
Yeah.
at that.
You look a little like an older J.D. Vance, actually.
I get that a lot.
I can see that.
I mean, I get
see
that.
that?
a
I
lot.
could totally see
And
that.
I just thought of that.
And my response has just been, well, hillbilly's hillbilly. I don't know what to tell you. It doesn't matter
You take
which
the boy,
part.
you take the Billy out of the hill.
Yeah, which part of the hills you grew up in, I guess. But yeah, I get that a lot.
That's
it's
funny.
Crazy.
Yeah, you do. I can see that. Well, and and maybe I'm totally wrong, but I kind of felt like there were some where we don't want to go with the old establishment, the old guard stuff going on a little bit. I would have likened that to Ashcroft's because I was surprised Ashcroft got third, but I don't know the ins and outs of, because I mean, back in the day, and this has been a while ago, the Ashcroft name, it was big.
It was big.
It was big back in the day.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it still has. I mean, everybody who knows anything about politics in Missouri knows the Ashcroft family. It's just that was really surprising to me. But if the money's spent in the right places, I don't know.
So it was a really interesting race. I was disappointed because there were a lot of lies that were just flatly told.
Which is frustrating.
And negative campaigning. Everybody says they hate it, but politicians tend to use it because it works.
Yeah.
That's the,
And people will cast their votes based on what I've been told. I mean, I had somebody call me and say, well, I heard that Jay Ashcroft is all for open borders. Well, that's not true.
No, that doesn't make
It's
sense.
not even
Yeah.
remotely true. Jay Ashcroft wants to sell Missouri to China. Well, that's not true. But things were being said
Yeah.
that were not accurate, and that's frustrating when those tactics work.
yeah.
Yeah.
But you have to remember those low voter turnouts, they impact. So let's say Will and I are running against each other. in
That
a
would be
race.
fun.
No, that would not
Highly
be.
unlikely.
That would not be fun.
I know.
A cousin would win, though. That's
That's
cool.
right, yeah.
It would
That-
be,
The family would prevail.
It's a very hillbilly setup.
the family would prevail. So let's say we run against each other, and I have a solid base of 25%. And that's my ceiling and my floor. All my people will show up,
Yep.
Yeah.
He's going to win.
period. In a big voter turnout, Will can beat me
Yeah.
pretty easily.
Yeah. Makes sense.
But in a low voter turnout, my people still show up.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they're going to now, for everybody that stays home, my people now account for a bigger percentage of the people who didn't stay home.
Yeah.
And so what you end up having is that in a real low voter turnout, crazy things occur that otherwise would not have.
Unexpected. That's very
That's
interesting.
where politics
It's very
gets really
interesting.
multi-layered because
Yeah.
sometimes, it's not about, getting people to vote for you. It's just if you can discourage the people that might vote for somebody else to just
Not show up.
not care.
Oh, and if you see stupid stuff, they'll say, okay, everybody, Republicans vote on Tuesday and Democrats vote on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Or vice versa,
yeah.
stupid stuff. And it's meant as a half-hearted joke as much as anything else. But there are tactics of trying to get people. And one of the ways you do that is by presenting polls
Yeah.
that show
yeah.
your guy way ahead and your guy
Yeah.
now
So why
will.
bother?
Yeah, so just don't even show up.
So why
Yeah.
bother? Yeah. Your
So-
vote's not going to count.
But what also happens is if my guy's way ahead, he doesn't need me.
That's true too.
And I got stuff to do.
Right.
So from my perspective, living in a republic, not a democracy.
Yeah.
Living in a republic.
Factual, correct. Fact check, true.
Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution declares that each state shall have a Republican form of government.
There you go.
Living in a republic, it is, I believe, my duty to show up and vote.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's not even a question of whether I like this guy, because I know most everybody. I don't like everybody.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't have to like them to vote for them.
I frequently don't
Right.
care for them individually.
Yep.
Yeah. That's a problem.
I mean, but I'm not electing. I'm not electing my.
A best friend.
Yeah, that's not
Yeah.
the case.
It's not a Valentine as I saw coming.
Yeah. That's,
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
So it's I consider it my duty to actually vote.
Yeah.
And not everybody sees it that way, and I don't belabor the point with them. I mean, they are at liberty, and that's the cool thing about liberty is people can do things you don't like.
Yeah.
true.
That is
And
true.
free speech. People can say things you don't like.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what November's like. I have a feeling we're going to have a low turnout. have a feeling we're going to have a disenfranchised group of mid people. And this is just my guess. I could be totally wrong. What was the turnout last presidential election? Was it lower or higher? Well, we know. Nobody knows. We don't really know.
There's the turnout,
no.
and then there's the
The
turnout.
turnout. What was the turnout?
Yeah, well,
Was it lower on the higher
Well,
side?
allegedly, it was the highest voter turnout nationwide by a huge margin.
yeah.
That's interesting.
Because you had both presidential candidates got more votes than the winner of the previous presidential election.
It's interesting.
It's mathematically improbable,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's what happened. But you never can tell. The problem is that anytime there's an emotionally driven issue,
Yeah.
people will show up. Now, they may not have researched, they may not understand what's going on, and they may vote in races that don't have anything to do with the emotional driven issue.
Yeah.
And then their impact is dramatic.
The down ballot.
Down ballot can be impacted one way or the other. So this presidential election is going to be a big deal. The
Yeah.
amendments to the Constitution that will be on the ballot are going to be a big deal.
Really?
Yeah.
Of course, we haven't heard anything about those.
Well, we're still counting signatures, but
For the November election.
for the
Yeah.
November
We had
election,
some on the-
we had
the-
two, yeah.
Yeah.
But for the November election, it's entirely possible that abortion will be on the ballot as an amendment.
No joke.
And
Holy cow.
The effort is to make abortion a constitutional right in the state of Missouri.
Oh, a Missouri. You're talking about Missouri. Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha. I was like, wait,
Yeah, we can't
what?
amend the US
I didn't. I
we
was
can't
like,
amend
wait,
the US
what? I was
Constitution
so
by popular
confused.
vote.
Yeah, that didn't make any sense. Okay.
There's a little more to it
Yeah.
Yeah.
than that.
So,
Well, I know other states have put that on there.
yeah.
Should be harder than that in Missouri, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, it should, and we tried awful hard, but the fact of the matter is, in 2019, we had a bill. This was before my time in the legislature, but we had a bill that would have altered the way in which the Constitution could be amended, and one senator killed that.
Yeah. Okay.
Tell you what, it is a very complicated process with so many moving parts that most people don't understand. And it kind of goes back to the things that we were talking about with the local election before it happened last week. You know, there's a lot of, okay, so you saw all these negative comments on Facebook and other, I'm sure, social media outlets about the tax increase for the fire department, right? All these negative comments. If you looked at those, it looked like that thing was going to fail tenfold. Well, the votes come out, and then it won by a landslide.
Yeah.
So to me, what I see on that is the people who are barking the loudest aren't really necessarily representing the majority, is my thought, on especially local issues.
It can sure be that way. So when I was city manager, we had this deal in Chillicothe where we had on Friday nights during the summer months, bands would come to this local restaurant. They had a big parking lot and they had bands.
Yeah.
And they would come from all over the area, and it was a big deal. It was a lot of fun, actually. And the mayor, great guy, but he was very sensitive to criticism from the public.
Tough job to have.
There's a lot of
is.
people out there.
It is.
Yeah.
It
There's
is.
a lot of people out there like that.
And so anyway, he tells me, he said, "Hey, we got to shut this down." And I said, "Why?"
Why? Yeah. Why don't we do that?
And he said, "Well, I'm getting phone calls from people. They're really upset about the noise." And I said, "Okay, well, how many did you get?" And he said, "Well, several." And I said, "Okay, was it less than 100?" He said, "Well, yeah." And I said, "Well, you understand 100 is 1% of the overall population
Yeah.
of this community. It's 10,000
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
So 1%, less than 1%, are upset, and you want to throw it out for the other 99 point whatever percent?"
Yeah.
He said, "Well, still, I have a lot of phone calls." I said, "Okay, how many?" And he said, "Well, it's probably 20 plus."
Yeah, more than I would have thought.
Which
Yeah.
is a lot of phone calls. But then I said, 20 individual people, or did 4 people call you 5 times each?
Ding, ding.
Yeah, everybody. The people who are really mad are the ones who get heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's an old adage in city government.
Yeah.
Only people show up to meetings and such are the ones who are mad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You never hear from people who say, "Hey, you guys are doing a pretty good job and we appreciate it."
Yeah.
That doesn't really happen
No,
very
never.
often. So people get angry. There's another old adage in politics, and that is that signs don't vote.
Yeah.
So somebody's got their signs everywhere. And you go, "Oh man, this guy's crushing it."
Yeah.
But signs don't get to vote.
Yeah. It's true.
And neither do Facebook posts.
No. Well, and the biggest take that I had from that is people don't understand how local government, national government, state government, they don't understand how it works. The majority of people don't understand how it works. I saw so much mingled in on those comments of things that were, we're talking about, there's the city of Rogersville, there's this fire department, there's the LR school district. Those are 3 completely separate entities.
They're all government,
They're all government. They
which a lot of people also don't understand.
don't understand. They're all government. They don't have the same budget. They don't have the same.
They're not even part of the same entity.
They're not.
not.
Yeah, they're not. They literally are connected in no way other than the fact that they all exist in Rogersville.
in they overlap their
So
service area.
it's the same thing where we know that McDonald's and Divine Deli are 2 restaurants that are not owned and operated by the same people.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly
We
right.
know
Yeah.
that, but we seem to blur all government together.
So it's a function of the fact that we are a republic and not a democracy. And in a republic, you're supposed to elect people who represent your interests to go, and they have to deal with all the garbage
Yeah.
at that level. And so,
Rather than we all vote on every little issue.
yeah. And,
Yeah.
And the reason is because those issues are intricate and detailed, and they're tough.
And there's a lot of them.
Some of them aren't so tough. Some of them are just stupid, and you say, "No, we're not
Yeah.
doing that."
Yeah.
But there are ones that are difficult, and I spend a lot of time reading those bills. And if I were still working as a city administrator, I wouldn't have time to read those bills.
right.
Sure.
If I'm spending time putting food on my family's table, I don't have time to deal with that
No.
stupidity.
No.
And so, why don't we just pure democracy and everybody, we've got touchstone, just vote yes or no. It doesn't work that way.
No, it
All right,
doesn't work.
here's a loaded question for you.
Well, hold on just a second before you do that. So, here's so let me just finish.
Yeah.
So because of that, we're not it's not expected of people to fully understand the different layers of government and how they all work and don't work with one another. If you ask most people how many governments are there in the United States, the vast majority will say one.
Yeah.
People who are thinking will say there's 51, the national and the 50 states. There are well over 100,000 governments in the United States.
Absolutely.
Every county, every town,
Every mosquito
every
district.
school board,
Yeah.
every homeowners association.
Absolutely. Well, those don't 100% count. They act like government, and they shouldn't. And I've got a bill coming up about that. by
Oh,
the way.
boy.
Oh, interesting.
If you have a
That'd be
homeowners
fun.
association that has more than 1,000 homes, this bill would require that you either break up the homeowners association or you have to file as a city if you're in an unincorporated area.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
We're not going to let you. We're not going to let you be government light.
Government.
Yeah.
Because it's usually government heavy.
No, that's
because there's
that's
no
fair.
rules.
Yeah, yeah.
No, there's no, and that is one of the biggest gray areas
Yeah.
in this. Well, that I deal with on a regular basis is this concept of HOAs and frankly not HOAs, especially when you have things like covenants.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you talk about like there's one guy, let's say Ron's running a subdivision of 2,000 homes in like St. Louis somewhere, because we don't have those here. The power Ron has is pretty crazy,
Yeah,
right?
It
And
absolutely
with no
is.
oversight.
Absolutely is. But
Yeah.
anyway, so we set it up by being a republic for people not to know, not to understand. They shouldn't have to. Why should they deal with this garbage? That's my job.
Yeah.
But in the interim, we struggle with people because they don't know the distinction between the levels. And then when somebody like me, dumb enough that I am, comes on Facebook and says, hey, here's how it actually works.
Yeah.
And then people are like, we don't want
We don't want to
don't
know.
wanna
We don't
know.
know the truth.
information. What in the world?
No,
you know?
no,
No, it doesn't.
No. I don't want to be. I don't want my opinion to be told that, or my idea to be told that it's wrong
Yeah,
because
well.
I just didn't know.
Well, what I was going to ask you was, I know you read the bills, but
do.
we've got how many people up there in your position that really kind of don't?
Well, there are 163 members of the House. We had one empty seat that will now be filled. So, and 111 of them were Republicans. We'll see what happens in November, what the number actually is. Out of that 163 total, though, we sat down and we were going through it. Who actually reads the bills? We got to 10
Okay.
that actually read the bills.
Actually read the bill? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. They're hard to read.
Yeah, sure they are.
Absolutely.
Well,
yeah.
they're hard to read because they're boring, and
Yeah.
so many of them are just dumb.
Have you ever tried just like uploading them to Chat GPT and having it kick back some summaries
You
for
know what?
you?
Some of them are written that way. So,
I'll bet that's true. Yeah.
so
It's amazing what that sucker can do.
It
Oh,
is.
it is.
It's
It's
impressive.
mind blowing.
So, but what we do is we tend to, everybody has their area of specialty.
Yeah.
So my background in city government and in budgeting, a lot of the bills that have to do with municipal issues and budgeting, and then the Constitution, which is my background as well. So I'll take those. I read them all, but I really focus on those issues. I hone in on those. And then there's other reps that have banking backgrounds or construction backgrounds
Yeah.
or farming
Got
backgrounds.
any lawyers up there?
We have a couple of lawyers, one or two. And we all kind of focus on our areas.
That makes
And-
sense.
And there are people I trust
Yeah.
that they've never lied to me.
One or two.
yeah.
Well, that's a huge deal in Jefferson City.
bet it
If you lie to somebody, you're toast.
Yeah.
yeah.
Nobody will ever trust you again. You lie one time, that's all she wrote.
Oh, that's good. Well, that's good.
Yeah, it is good.
And it's because of this mountain of legislation that comes at us.
Yeah.
If I can't trust you,
Yeah.
I'll never deal with you again.
Yeah.
So I've got some people that I trust who I also believe are smart. Mm-hmm. That narrows it down quite a bit, actually.
Yeah.
And that their vision of what government ought to be is similar to mine. I believe that the role of government, as declared in our Constitution, is to defend the rights and liberties of our citizens. And that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
There isn't
We are
any...
so far away from
There
that.
is no other
no other-
legitimate purpose of governance
Preach.
than that.
Preach it, brother.
That's
Yeah.
all there is.
Yeah.
And, so when they, somebody will come along and say, well, I've got a bill that says all babies should eat. Okay, that's a wonderful concept. I believe in feeding babies.
Sure.
but that's not the role of government.
Well, I get that. That's one of the things that
not
drives me.
government's job.
Kind of the
That's
role of
one
the
thing
person
that-
who had the baby.
Well,
Weird.
it ought to be, but then there are charities, there are extended
Yeah.
families, there are adoption services. There are so many different avenues through the private sector by which a child can be cared for. It's hard to starve in this country.
Well, that's,
It
that's the thing
absolutely
that drives
is,
me up
yeah.
the wall about a lot of the political advocacy in that vein is all the people like, well, what about the children? Are we got to take care of the poor people? I'm like, if you feel that way, then you need to take care of the poor people.
You go do
not
that.
pick my pocket and use my money to take care of the poor. Now, I'm not, and that sounds harsh, but because we all should personally be caring for the least of these, but
Yeah.
we shouldn't be legislating because we think somebody else should be spending more of their money
Well, and we
to care
shouldn't.
for somebody
And
else.
it all boils down to we shouldn't take someone's money and force them to use it in a certain way when that person might want to do something different with their money.
Well, that's all government's doing these days.
100%. That's
Well-
all they're doing.
Well, furthermore, you get to toss a pebble into the pond. You do not control where the ripples go.
Yeah.
So once we do something for the good of the children
Yeah.
or veterans or whatever the case may be, you have now set precedent for a day in which our views are not the majority held. It's a different set of views, a different set of values. But we taught them that it's okay to use governmental force. I mean, a gun showing
Gun,
up at your
yeah,
door.
It's always a gun.
Yeah.
Governmental force to come in and take what you've earned and give it to a group with whom you disagree because a majority of people in Jefferson City or Washington, D.C. have declared that this is important for our society. And that's not a function of government for them or for us.
Well, and there was
And I fight against it all the time.
as well
Yeah.
you should. There was a wonderful president. I can't remember who it was. I want to say it was Grant. That
I know you're a Grant fan.
well, yeah, he did. And it's because of this. So I really hope it was him. I'm going to have to research to make sure it was.
Fact check is still pending.
Fact check pending. That, and if it wasn't him, I'll try to correct it. I've got a book somewhere. I can't remember the name of the book that started with this story, but there was the Dust Bowl hit Texas or whatever, and it was a huge problem for the Texas ranchers, farmers. I mean, they were just distraught. It was huge economic impact, and they wrote to the federal government and said, "We need assistance." And the letter that came back is, our heart is with you. We desperately, want, but it is not the function of government to take from the public treasury to give to a private harm. And I thought, that is brilliant. That is the exact correct response, as heartbreaking as it is. We've got to find some other way to help you.
Yeah.
Because we can't use everyone's money to benefit an individual or small group of individuals. Because that's not what government is for.
There are very few of such examples. Davy Crockett is another one. Are you familiar with this story?
No.
I don't know.
So Crockett was going through Tennessee and trying to drum up support for his reelection. And he sees a man plowing his field with a mule. And Crockett timed his steps so that he would hit the fence row at the same time that this farmer did. And introduces himself. I'm Davy Crockett. I'm running. He said, "I know who you are, Mr. Crockett." He said, "I voted for you last time, but I'll never vote for you again." He said, "Well, why is that?" He said, "When the fire broke out in a part of Washington, D.C., where the widows of the Revolutionary War veterans were housed," he said, "you all used money from the Treasury to rebuild their homes." And Crockett says, "Well, yeah, they're widows, and we owe them a debt of service." He said, "It wasn't," and I'm paraphrasing grossly, "it wasn't your money to spend.
Right.
Yeah.
That's not charity. That's you using my money
That's stealing.
to make yourself feel better about a situation."
exactly right.
He said, "You all in Congress could have each declared one paycheck, 1 month's paycheck, bind it together, and it would have been enough money to take care of those widows, and that would have been a true act of charity,
Yes.
and we all would have applauded you. But you didn't do that. You voted to take my money to make you feel better about a bad situation in hopes that I would feel better with you, and I'll never vote for you again." And Crockett said it It really got to him.
Yeah.
And so he did win. I believe he did win that re-election, but he never voted that way again, and he got voted out the next one.
Yep.
And that's when he went to the Alamo.
Yeah.
Well, and people don't.
Why not?
Yeah, well, I mean, and I can't, I don't use the language that Crockett used, but he essentially said, Tennessee can go fly a kite, I'm going to Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and he was right, and you know that's such a nuanced understanding of the proper role of government and the proper role of charity that I don't think 10% of our population understands.
No, and
we
even
have to. It's
far,
critical to the functioning of a
far
true
less
republic.
than that operate that way.
Right.
I mean, just it's
How
in
many
their own
peop-
lives.
How many people have you heard say, the government ought to fix this?
No, you got to fix it.
Yeah, if the government,
Yeah.
first, the government's horrible at fixing anything.
True.
Oh, they don't fix things.
The government,
They don't.
asking the government to fix things is like asking your surgeon to use a chainsaw to open you up.
Yeah.
It really is.
I mean,
Yeah.
it will do it, but
Well,
it's horrible.
I don't think a lot of
the best
people understand the money and scale of this stuff. I don't think they grasp that at all. People have they understand the world that they live in, and sometimes it's very small, and they just don't get the amount of money. They don't get the amount of how easy it is for it to be wasted and how much money
Well,
is
what's
being
in a
wasted. They
federal
don't have any
government, what's
concept
$1 billion
of that.
here, $1 billion there? It's nothing.
I can tell you what $1 billion is in my life. You
Well,
want $1
but
billion? I mean, and
But it's
people don't
nothing.
understand
The
that.
they'll
It's
spend
nothing.
$1 billion like it's pocket change.
It's crazy.
And the government's the national government is different in the sense that they also print the money.
Yeah,
That's true.
So it's impossible for them to
can't.
overspend from a balance sheet perspective.
Yeah.
'cause
Yeah.
They just print more money.
Right.
Now, that has dramatic and horrible effects.
Does that have
now.
anything to do with inflation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is what inflation is, actually, as you know. The state, on the other hand, we are constitutionally prohibited from having an unbalanced budget.
Amen.
However,
So we cheat.
However, 6 years ago in 2018, the budget for the state of Missouri was $29 billion. Mm-hmm. This past year, it's $51 billion plus.
Woo!
In 6 years, what is that, 40%, 45% that we've increased in 6 years. However, that budget is bogus because, so the fiscal year of 22 to 23, 2020, 2023, that 1 year period, the fiscal year, we know how much was spent. Now, they were budgeted right under $50 billion for that year. When the bills came back, having been paid, they had not spent $10.3 billion. They
Okay.
did not intend to spend $10.3 billion. They just wanted in the budget
Oh, I get what you're saying.
so that they...
The budget's the budget. What they spend is the other. Yeah.
So the budget
Yeah.
is literally overinflated by 20%. So it really should be like 41, 42.
Yeah, right.
And that's assuming that 2018 that they were actually being frugal. They weren't.
They weren't.
But even if you look at inflation, we're looking at 41, 42%. Well, that other $10 billion that we've got on the books gives allowance for state departments to do things that none of us intended for them to do
Yeah.
at all. And they tell us, well, we have to have it because this is how much we've had in the past and we need a 3% increase. Show me where you've spent the money previously in a wise way with return on that investment for the citizens of Missouri, and then we can talk. And that's just on the money. We haven't even begun to ask, show me in the Constitution where your authority lies for you to be able to do this program at all.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we've had less than stellar support from the executive branch.
Yeah, well, that's unfortunate. Hey, we're closing in on the end of our show, so I want to give you an impossible Herculean task. Before we get to that point. So you're headed back up there in a few months, and I know that one of the things that you're trying to get introduced is a Missouri fair tax.
Yep.
And there's a lot of confusion about what fair tax is. A lot of people think it's a flat tax. It is not. Could you take the last 4 or 5 minutes we've got here?
Oh, sure,
And
yeah.
just let everybody know what that means.
Essentially, the fair tax, as a concept, my legislation has not yet been written, and it will be altered by the process maybe so much so that I can't even support my own
Yeah.
bill. That happens.
Sure.
Yeah.
But the premise behind the fair tax is that when you tax something, it tends to stifle whatever it is that you're taxing. So if you tax something, people are less likely to participate in that behavior. That's why they give tax credits for marriage, because they were trying to encourage people to get married, have children. That's why those tax credits exist. It's a manipulation, which ought not be the case.
Yeah, because anyway.
Yeah, it's a manipulation of the system. So you have that which you are trying to kill, you tax, and that which you're trying to promote, you give tax credits to. That's the thought process.
Or subsidies.
Yeah. So we tax income and property ownership, both real and personal. And we fought a revolution over the ability to have those things.
Yes, we did.
And the idea that we tax income and property, which are the fruits of individual labors, is astounding to me.
Yeah.
We complain about how we are a throwaway society and we just buy stuff and we spend all this money and then we throw it out. We're not worried about it. That's because we tax income and property and not consumption.
Yep.
And the fair tax is a consumption tax, which essentially says, look, if you spend money, we're going to tax that sale of that item. Now, at a specified rate. That's after we sent a prebate to everybody. So anybody under poverty wages or whatever the
So a family of four is approximately $32,000.
So
Yeah.
Anybody less than that, they would pay zero taxes under this system.
and potentially a negative tax rate.
Yeah, potentially, but you don't want that either. You don't want to encourage people to stay
I understand.
at that level. But zero taxes, and that being the case, you choose how much money you're going to pay in taxes based on what you actually purchase. And if you save your money, that's never taxed, ever. And
No retirement savings at
No.
all or ever taxed.
you would never pay any
Not
retirement
until you spend it.
until you spend it.
Like every dime you get is in an IRA.
Yeah, and by the way, this is the only tax system that would actually tax the underground economy as well.
Mm-hmm.
Criminals make an unbelievable amount of money, and I'm not encouraging them to do so, but they do.
Untaxed.
And it's completely untaxed. They don't report to the IRS on account of how they're criminals.
Yeah.
But when they go and buy their Lamborghini, they're going to pay their fair share at that.
It actually makes the immigration problem less of a problem from an economic standpoint because all of those people are paying into the system then as well.
Everybody would as well. And Missouri is a very heavy...
Underground economy.
No, the word just fell right out. I'm going full-blown Joe Biden.
Undocumented worker.
No, like Branson.
Transient?
Tourist?
Tourism.
Yeah. I was like, what are we talking about?
Could not say the word. You know how bad that is when the English falls out of your head?
Yeah, no, I'm there.
Tough getting old. We're a very heavy tourism state, so we have people coming from all over the country and indeed all over the world. Why shouldn't we allow those individuals to help us pay for the resources that allow for Branson and
Because I mean, people pay sales tax, but that's not it's not the same. Like it's not the same about what you're talking about.
It would be a sales tax.
It's just a higher sales tax.
And you would see it right there on your ticket. You would know exactly how much you're paying. And you do away with the need to file income tax. You do away with the need to file a Mother May I on your property.
I can tell you the most insulting thing as a business owner is working your butt off, selling something that you've worked hard on, and watching a huge portion of that money, huge, disappear.
Yeah.
It is the most disgusting, awful thing about being a business owner.
So I'm
it's so insulting.
I'm not an advocate for new laws, but I think useful laws. So what you should have to do is a law that prints your check that shows in big bold numbers what your gross is, in bigger numbers what you got withheld by government taxes, and then your actual take home in tiny numbers, so that people could like in red, like the taxes in red. So it was just bold to people because that's the goal of the confiscatory, we're going to take it out of your check before you get it, maybe people won't notice.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
so disgusting.
If everybody had to write a check to the various levels of government, because of those 100,000 governments, they all have one thing in common: they take your money.
If everybody
you see
was
it,
if everybody was self-employed, they'd get a whole lot more.
If everybody had to write a check at the end of the year for how much the government was requiring of them, there'd be a whole bunch of tea dumped in a harbor somewhere
Yep.
all over again.
Real
Yep.
fast.
Because we're paying far more taxation
It's
than,
at least
than our,
50%.
I mean, when you
if you add it all up, the estimate is nationwide average. You pay about 60 cents out of every dollar that you earn into taxation somewhere.
Somewhere, yeah.
when you have to call your accountant to decide if you want to sell a property within a year,
yeah.
just to make sure you're not going to completely screw yourself, not just out of your income, but out of benefits that you'll receive,
Yeah.
like Social Security and health insurance. It's freaking nuts.
And that doesn't
It's
even
nuts.
include the annual cost of compliance with the IRS tax
Yeah,
code.
it's nuts. But if everybody was self-employed for a couple of years and got to write those checks,
We out of our economy,
They might understand a little bit better.
trillions of dollars annually get spent on just tax compliance.
Yeah.
So that's all money that could go to, feed poor people.
yeah.
But no, we're giving it to accountants are useful. I'm not down on accountants because we have to have them right now.
Yeah.
But, we're going to pay people to figure out how to fill out these forms. Couldn't we use that money for a better purpose? I would think so.
Let's say 30, and we've made lots of points today.
Yeah.
Darin,
Love
it's
having
always
you on the show.
and I always appreciate hearing you talk. You have a very good way of providing information, and that's backed with knowledge and evidence. And
Radical concept.
crazy. And the
Facts
whole
and
thing
nationality.
is like we really badly need to get back to a point where we can have these conversations and have differing opinions about things and still find some common ground, at least with being able to have a conversation.
I'm going to be having some in the various communities, some opportunities for people to gather together, ask me questions,
It's good.
tell me I'm doing something wrong, whatever
Yeah.
the case may be, listening stations, whatever you want to call them. I'm going to be doing those this summer, and I'm going to try and have a location here in Rogersville where folks can come by and yell at me a little bit, and that's
It's a
fine.
coffee talk.
Coffee talk.
Coffee talk.
Coffee talk.
We'll just wait
To
for
give you a
sweater
topic.
weather. Just wait for sweater weather.
That's funny.
Nice.
But nevertheless, yeah. Sorry. It is the waffle.
It is very waffly.
When in
It's a
Rome.
very waffly ending. I like it. Okay, we should probably wrap things up.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Darin.
Thanks,
for
Darin.
watching
My
us, everybody,
privilege.
and we'll be back next Tuesday.